Yeah, let me know. I have a friend.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry to interrupt, but we're going to get ready to start. So if everyone can come scoot to the front of the room, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. How many years has it
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Oh, really?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the first Latinas in Tech event of the year. My name is Larissa Prairie. I'm on the board here alongside with Elena, who's at the front row, and Anna, our community outreach manager. Without them, we wouldn't be here, so thank you, guys. And I also wanted to welcome everyone, either if you're returning or if you're new. Thank you to our host company, Zendesk, for having us in your beautiful, beautiful space. You guys are a great partner of ours, and we truly appreciate the hospitality. I'd also like to thank all of you for coming out. If there's anybody who's here as a first timer, could I see a raise of hands? All right, nice. Welcome to you. Round of applause for our newcomers. So since you guys are new, and I'm gonna give you a little brief introduction of who we are as a nonprofit, as an organization. It'll serve as a refresher for some of you who haven't been to one of our events in a while. So Latinas in Tech was born in 2014. The founders, who unfortunately weren't able to be here today, is Rocio Vanillo and Gretel Pereira. I'm not sure if you guys know them. But yeah, they founded Latinas in Tech in 2014 under these three values that today stands as our mission statement. We're here to connect with each other, we're here to support each other, and we're here to empower each other as we navigate the tech industry and our careers. So these three values, they really helped grow our community. Today we are about 8,000 women connected through a Facebook group. We're kicking off the year with 11 chapters. Last year we had 8 throughout the whole year. This year we're entering 2020 with 11, and the new chapters are Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and Boston. The other chapters, as you can see, is the San Francisco Bay Area chapter, Sacramento, LA, Austin, Miami, Chicago, and New York, and we have a chapter in Mexico City as well. And this year we're expanding even further globally. We're going to open a chapter in Canada, in Brazil, and also in Europe. So if you guys have connections out there, please let us know, let them know that we're coming for them. And yeah, let's continue growing this.
I didn't catch that.
We're going to continue to grow. We represent 23 nationalities, and we also are employed by the top 100 tech companies in the world. So without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to our moderator, Danielis Padron. Sorry for butchering your name. Danielis, please join us in the... Danielis is the chair of Latinas in Finance, and she's also a financial advisor at Wells Fargo. And I'd also like to introduce you guys our special guest, Elena Gomez, Chief Financial Officer at Zendesk. Thank you. You have the floor.
All right, hello.
Testing. Hello. Testing.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. So first of all, I want to thank Latinas in Tech for giving me the honor of interviewing such an amazing trailblazer, that is Elena Gomez. Elena,
Thank you.
welcome.
I'm blushing.
Yes, you're an inspiration for many of us, and we greatly look forward to getting to know you on a more personal level and hearing your story.
Great.
So, you've developed your career throughout numerous roles, starting as assurance manager for KPMG, then moving to vice president of finance with Charles Schwab, senior business leader at Visa, and senior vice president of finance and strategy at Salesforce. Now, you are the chief financial officer of Zendesk, an international company that focuses on connecting businesses to their clients with locations in London, Manila, Sao Paulo, and Mexico, to name a few. This is a very successful career trajectory that a lot of us aspire to. So first, did you always know what you wanted to do? And if not, what was the turning point in your career?
Sure. So, no, I should say, I never thought I would be a CFO, for sure, until, really 5 years ago, it came up. But it was always, I always wanted to do, actually, I'm going to admit, I wanted to be an accountant from a very young age. I don't admit that too often, but not because it's not a great career, it is, but people tend to think you're kind of nerdy if you're an accountant. But my grandfather was an accountant in El Salvador, and he was my nanny too. And so he said to me, you gotta grow up and be an accountant. I get emotional about it. But anyway, so that's why I'm an accountant, basically. That's why I started my career. And then that led to, oh, well, wait a second, an accountant isn't actually nerdy after all, right? It's really someone who can see the breadth of a company and how it works. And if you can see that, then you can really see how to grow a company. But I didn't know that, obviously, when I was 22, right? I just thought, oh, I'm going to do what my grandpa said, learn how to invest and spend money, basically. That's what I thought it was. And as my career evolved, I quickly realized that, oh, wait a second, this is a great vantage point that a lot of people don't have. Like if you're in, let's say, marketing, or you're in sales or product, whatever role you play, communications or something, you see your swim lane, and you have to understand the whole company, no matter who you are. But when you're in finance, you definitely have to understand the whole company. There's no way around it, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. Being in finance myself, definitely. How did you position yourself for your role as CFO? How did you strategize your career path?
Yeah, so I didn't, So I'm not one of those, like, I've never been that person that says in 5 years I'm going to do this. So I'm unique in that way. Not that I didn't aspire to always grow in my career. My anchor was really, no matter what job I have, I always want to be learning. And if I stop learning, then that's a signal that I should go do something different. So I was comfortable at Salesforce. I actually thought I was going to retire there. I had young kids that were at the time, 4 and 7, and I just thought I can't switch because I have kids, and I figured out my schedule, and so I don't want to disrupt that. And then I got a call from a friend who actually was working at Zendesk, and he says, "Hey, the CFO gig is opening. You should put your name in the hat." And I'm like, "No, I'm good. I'm gonna. It's Christmas time. I don't want to disrupt my family, so I'm good." So I just didn't do anything about it. And then I got back from the holidays, and someone else called me, a different person, and said, "Hey, I heard the Zendesk CFO gig is opening up. You should put your name in the hat." And I still said, "No, I'm good. I'm really good." And then the third person, who I respect, who was one of my mentors, she called me and she said, "I hope you don't mind, and put your name in the hat for the Zendesk gig." So talk about being a bold mentor and leader. So I was like, "Oh, okay. I guess I probably have to do something about that now that my name is in the hat." So I didn't position myself; she positioned me. So I guess the lesson is that if you have a mentor, or if you are a mentor, it never hurts to push your mentee a little bit over the edge to help them take a risk. Because I wouldn't be here if she had done that. I was really comfortable, and that's the other lesson that I have never looked back leaving Salesforce, and I've been incredibly uncomfortable as a new CFO when I got here, and that's awesome because I learned so much by putting myself in a place where I'd never been a CFO before, didn't really know what I was getting myself into in the big scheme of things, but I sort of knew I'd figure it out.
Yeah. That's incredible. I'm glad you put your name in the hat. So.
Yeah, me too. I think that often, yeah.
Speaking of mentors and sponsors, how many mentors and sponsors did you have, and how were you able to find them?
Oh gosh, I've had a lot of mentors over the years. They found them organically. It wasn't, will you be my mentor kind of thing or anything like that. It was more about the relationships I have with people, and just. You guys all have them in places like this where you show up and you meet someone and you spark a chemistry with someone that maybe you don't with someone else, and then you realize, well, wait a second, maybe we can be, you can help me, I can help you, that kind of thing. And so, but I've never asked someone to be my mentor. That I've never done it. Maybe I was always shy, but I definitely leverage my friendships for mentorship, if that makes sense. And now I always think about having sort of 4 types of mentors in my life. So one is someone who I admire and respect, and like I have a female crush on or something, and like, okay, that's my stretch mentor. And then there's a mentor in my workplace who is someone who I respect and knows enough about what I do, but isn't, say, in finance in this case, but they're at the company. And then I have mentors who I've worked with in the past that know enough about me but don't work at Zendesk, right? So that's different than a mentor at Zendesk, a mentor outside of Zendesk. And then I have a mentor in my personal life who also was a key decision maker for me to take the job here. And the best part about that person was she was a parent at my kid's school who really didn't know what I did. Like, I think she knows what I do, but it doesn't really matter. She knows who I am. And so when I told her, hey, I got this job and I have to make a decision, I'm stressing out about it, and I was losing sleep. And so I went on one last walk with her, and I said, I'm getting like a lot of pressure from my prior company to stay. They came and they gave like a counter offer or whatever. And then I'm getting pressure from Zendesk to accept the offer. And so I was in this very tough situation. My husband is awesome, but he was like, honey, I'll just support whatever you want. Like, that's not helpful right now. He was great, but he was letting me make the call. And my kids were also too young to really know. So this mom and I went for a walk, and she says, "Oh, you have to take this job, like for sure. Like there's no question. Like go push yourself and do something totally different." And I was looking at her like, "Do you even know? Like, because I don't know what you do exactly, but I think you're gonna crush it." And so I took the job after that call. Like that was what I needed. I needed someone to tell me. And the beauty about that, it was the fourth mentor, right? It wasn't my stretch mentor. It wasn't the person that was working with me. It was someone completely out of context, but knew me as an individual.
Wow, so that's really powerful. It's good to have like people from different angles that know different sides
absolutely.
of
That's the piece of advice I'd give to people for sure.
Okay, thank you. Were there any roadblocks that you faced along the way, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, there were times, and we all have them in our career. Roadblocks is maybe strong. I never feel like I let roadblocks come up, but I try to take a position that I'm going to outmaneuver my roadblock, I guess. But I think just early in my career, I don't know if people really understood, and it was my fault really. I didn't let them know who I was and what I was bringing to the table, and so I started realizing that I have to do a little bit of PR for myself, but not too much because that's not my style. But I almost defaulted to never really being, as vocal about what I was doing. And I realized that it's okay to articulate the value you bring as long as you do it in a way that's unassuming, if you will. And so I was my own roadblock in that I wasn't really, visible as much as I could have made myself visible.
Yeah, so actually speaking of that, I mean, there is a term that, it's very common that we're very aware of called imposter syndrome. So it sounds like that's a little bit of what you experienced, but if that was the case, how did you obtain the self-confidence to go for leadership roles later in your career?
Typically in my career, I've been fortunate that I've had people pull me up, which is what a lot of you probably are in leadership roles. So find someone in your career you're going to pull up, because that really means a lot to people. So I think that's important. I try to do that. My confidence really comes from my parents and my mom at a very young age, always telling me, you have to be confident. And my parents are immigrants, so their whole agenda was our kids are going to go to college and they're going to get a really good job and they're going to be, just like all your parents, right? They always want the next generation to do better. My parents were no different. And so my mom would always say, hey, you can do whatever you want as long as you work hard. And so I've always had this quiet confidence. It's different than arrogance, there's a very subtle difference that has helped me. And I think in the jobs I've taken, I've just brought that with me. My mom in the back of my head, you can do it, talking to my boss or something, but that's sort of just who I am.
Yeah. Silent confidence, got it. What was your experience growing up? Where's your family from?
So my parents are from, my dad's Mexicano and my mom is from San Salvador. So they met here in high school in 60s, early 60s, or maybe, actually, I don't know, maybe late 50s. And then they grew up, in the city in San Francisco. And then I was born, I have two older brothers, and we grew up basically in the Mission here in the city. So yeah. Yeah.
Very local.
I am local. Very local. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. What, other than Si Se Puede, what other lessons did you learn growing up from your family that you implement to date?
I think we have an incredible work ethic. My parents being immigrants, that's just what they do, right? They just said, work hard, work hard, work hard. And so I always joke that my dad was a truck driver. He delivered milk, actually. I don't know if you're probably too young, but back in the day, milkmen would wear this white uniform and a hat, and so he had his uniform as Sal. And I remember thinking, man, my dad's so cool. He drives a truck, and I get to honk the horn. But I always remember, if anything, he worked so hard, right? And so when I explain to him, sometimes my parents are now 80, what I do, I'm not really sure that they completely understand what I do, and it doesn't matter because they know I work hard, you know. So that's sort of a lesson that we learned really young. Just work really hard. Confidence was the other one that I would say. And then just follow through, and that's with anything, you know, with your friends, your whoever. If you say you're going to do something, you have to follow through. And I see so much of that in the workplace that doesn't happen. You know, you see, I mean, even my own team, you know, sometimes they'll ask them something, and is anyone from my team here? You'll ask them something, and then you have to ask again. You know, it's like, well, you should just follow through, right? But I've learned that from a very young age.
Yeah. Wow. Well, on that note, what were the most valuable skills that you feel like we learned throughout all of the various roles that we had?
Yeah, there's so many, but if I were to, I'll just rattle some off. So I think probably the most important one is clear and succinct communication, like no matter what job I've had, and no matter who comes to me. You know, as a CFO, I deal with everyone in the company. And the people who are successful are those that can distill that message into something very succinct. So that's number one. I think the other one that is, I think probably the most important is that your EQ is actually probably more important than your IQ. And I'm not bragging because I'm not, but I do have pretty good EQ. Like I know when someone's playing me, basically, and I know when someone's trying to like work the angle. But I also know in a room if I'm not landing the message the way I should, because I can read body language or I can see through the question that someone's asking that maybe my message didn't land. And so I could have the best analysis and the smartest team, but if I don't really understand how it's being received, then it doesn't really matter if that analysis was good. So it's almost better to have a, you know, pretty good analysis, but an amazing conversation and an exchange. And so to me, high EQ is really important. So reading the signals of what people are telling you is incredibly important, I think. And then I think the other one that has helped me a lot is in my roles, I've never let my job description define what I do. So probably the most recent example is, you know, I'm the CFO, obviously, of the company, but I have a finance team, and they're great. But I've recently been taking on customer success, and someone might say, well, what does that have to do with being in finance? But it has nothing to do with being in finance, actually. It has more to do with the fact that I have breadth of experience as an executive because I have intellectual curiosity and because I'm constantly asking questions and so on. And so I think that has served me well. This is probably the best example of it. But my entire career, I've always said, well, I'm in finance, but I'm going to go learn about how sales works. I'm going to go learn how product works. And so I've always extended my reach outside of my job.
Yeah.
So I think that's a skill that I would encourage everyone to really think about. Yeah.
Curiosity is definitely important.
Yeah, for sure.
Just a quick check-in. Can everyone hear us in the back?
Yeah, a little low.
A little low? Okay. Well, speaking of, as CFO, we can only imagine how busy you must be every single day. So do you have a ritual that you follow in order to stay balanced?
A ritual?
A ritual?
Oh, ritual. Oh, ritual.
Like, what does your routine look like?
Oh, my routine. So I get up at 4:30 in the morning, and I first sort of check email and, you know, sort of wake myself up, take the dog. I have a puppy, so she's a great pal at that time. And then I go work out, come back, and I make kid lunches. I have 2 kids, try to make healthy lunches. And then I check email really quick, get the kids off to school, uniforms, all that. And then I get in my car and hop in, and then I'm usually in by 9-ish, depending on what's going on. And then I have back-to-back meetings all day until something like this happens. So this is fun, actually. This is super fun, because it's not a meeting. But that's sort of my routine. So the way I try to keep that's why I work out, and that's why I get up early, because it's the only time I have that's mine. Because by the time I get back home after my workout, I'm waking up the family, and it's just a different thing. So I just encourage people to always create that time for yourself and create time for well-being and wellness and whatever that is, whether it's meditation or working out or whatever. I think that's incredibly important. And I did that before, long before I had kids.
Yeah, those are definitely important habits to have. Putting yourself first.
Yeah.
Being able to, you can't give from an empty vessel. So you have,
totally.
you have to replenish for sure. So where do you think, what's the next step in your career?
Oh, wow.
What's next?
I'm going to retire. I don't know. You know, I have a lot to do here still as a desk technique. I feel, Marcia would agree, I hope. I have a lot to do here still. So for now, I want to grow this company. You know, we're you know, going to be $1 billion company. That's a big deal for us, and so I got to make sure we get that this year. And then I want the next billion. So I feel like I need to complete that first round. And when I joined the company 4 years ago, we were, you know, $290 million. And it was in this stage, actually, we had 100 investors all here, and I was 100% nervous. And they introduced me, and one of the investors said, "Oh, so do you think you're going to be $1 billion company in 3 or 4 years?" And what the context is, the prior CFO had announced it a month prior, so there had been a press release or something while I was interviewing for the job, and I was like, "Oh man, I gotta, like, what is he doing?" You know. So of course I had to understand it and make a decision to take the job on that. So when he asked the question, I completely blushed, sure, and it felt like 1,000 seconds. And he said, "So do you believe that?" And I said, "Well, I wouldn't have taken the job if I didn't believe it." But everyone in the room didn't believe it. Like, that's why he was asking the question, because he's like, "This company's going to have to be $1 billion." You know, that was the tone of the question. So then I got a chip on my shoulders, and I said, "I'm going to remember this guy, and I'm going to get this company to be $1 billion." So we should get there this year, and I'm pretty proud about that. So I hope I see you. But I'm not done. So to your first question, I want to kind of get the next multi-billion-dollar journey for us.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
You're gonna definitely go up to him and be like, "Hey,
I'm gonna find him. I'm gonna hunt him down. No, I remember him, and he and I joke about it now.
Yeah. That's super funny. All right, well, we are done. So we're gonna go ahead and open it up for Q&A. We do need to get you out of here by 7:40.
Yeah.
All right. So what time is it now?
7.
Oh, it's 7. Wow. Okay, we have a lot of time then. All right.
Hey there, thank you so much for being here. I am really curious about the part where you were talking about how you did PR for yourself.
Yeah.
This can be a challenge for a lot of people, so I'm looking to get a little more specific. So, like, what spaces did you do this in front of who, when? More examples about that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So not PR in the, you know, I didn't get a creative team or a brand team to help me, but more so. For example, at the time, with my boss, she maybe didn't know everything I was doing, and so I just made sure that I had this approach in which I used my one-on-ones with her, and so I'd always start with people. You know, what do we need for that team? So I talked about my people, what my priorities were, and then what I had accomplished in the last 2 weeks or whatever. And I always made sure I spent time on what I had accomplished, because she didn't always know, and most often I would find out that she didn't know. So that was really simple, and I made it very structured, so it wasn't like I'm bragging at all. It was just, this is the standard way we use our one-on-ones. I always talk about my team, I talk about what my priorities are, and I talk about my accomplishments. And I was so shocked to realize that she probably hadn't really an appreciation for what I was doing. And then I asked her to see if we could talk about that as a team in our staff meeting, to say, "Hey, everyone, can you just talk about the top 3 things you're working on to get visibility?" And she found that super valuable, because there was an exchange of ideas that wasn't happening before, and she got to see all of us in relative comparison of, who's really driving here and who's sort of not driving. So that's when I say PR, it was being a little bit more specific about what I was doing.
Thanks so much for the chat, and it's my grandma's name, so I have an extra question for that. So there are so few Latinas serving as board members, and my hope is that many of us here in this room will get that opportunity, but I'd love to get your thoughts on being in a boardroom and what skills you think are necessary to do that and how you found your voice.
Sure. So I'm on two boards, two public company boards, and I'm also on the board of the Haas School of Business in Berkeley, because I went to school there. Sure. What's that? Go Bears, yeah, totally. I'll be there tomorrow if anyone's there. So I think the way I got the board opportunities came after I became a CFO, and that's a little bit because at Salesforce, Benioff doesn't really. It's not that he doesn't like us, that's too strong. He would prefer his executives to be focused on Salesforce, right? So it wasn't until I got here where I had that opportunity and my boss said, hey, if you want to be on a board, you should. I think you'll learn a ton, which I have, and it's made me a better CFO. Now getting there has all to do with just learning your skill and not learning, sharing your skill. So when I'm at a board meeting, just like I do at Zendesk, we talk about the strategy of the company, how we're growing the company, what our branding is, what our positioning is in the market, what the competition is, etc. And so you're just being a really good business person. So I would say if you really aspire to be on a board, get the breadth of understanding of wherever you are working, number one, because that's really what a board member does. Like, it's, for example, in our board today, I was on a board call this morning, and the conversation was around their long-term strategy, which you could argue there was 1 or 2 pages of financials, great, but the majority of it was where's growth going to come from, who are our customers, who do we want our customers to be, etc. And that's all stuff that we all see and know in our day-to-day life or work life. So just hone in on those things, and the best thing is really understand the end-to-end of a company, whatever that is, and whatever company you're in. And then the board opportunity came through a network. It was really a relationship I had actually from my banker, who not my Wells Fargo banker, or teller, whatever it is, the banker for Zendesk, who knew me and just happened to say, hey, I was at this event, I met the CEO, would you be interested in talking to him? And that's how it came to be. So I'm not going to lie, it is a little easier when you're at the C level, but it doesn't mean it can't happen. And I started my first board opportunity in a nonprofit that I did for, I just got off that board in December, but it was a great learning place too. So if you can find a board where you can learn the rhythm of the board, I think that's also important, because when I then joined a profit board, I sort of knew, oh, okay, when they say this, that means they're looking for approval, because you're not ever been in a boardroom. Most people haven't. So.
Hello, my name is Sol. I appreciate learning about your journey.
Oh, thank you.
One role to another.
Yeah.
What do you look for when you're looking at a company in terms of the leadership? For me, it's important to know that I'm going to join a company with a strong leadership, I imagine. Of course, for you, what are some of the things that you look for when you do that?
So leadership is definitely one of them. I think before I even get to the leaders, even with Zendesk, I looked at the opportunity, like where does Zendesk play in the market, and do I think it's a company that has legs and opportunity? Is there a market opportunity for the company? And then you look at the management team, and for me, it's a fit thing. You know, I'm a people person, so I want to make sure that if I'm going to work with my peers, I sort of like them. And thankfully I did. There wasn't any women really at the time when I joined on the leadership team. So I did ask my boss about that. It's like, hey, so what's up? You know, why is there no women? That's now changed, which is great. So I do look for a commitment to diversity for sure. That's important. And then the other thing I looked for, because I knew this public was awesome. Has the management team, you know, been in the public market for a while because we're a public company. So, and if you're joining a company that's pre-IPO, you want to look at what investment do they have, where does it come from, what VCs are on their in their investment portfolio, and who is on that management team and where have they been. That's what I look for. But the most important is, do you personally connect with the people that you're interviewing with? Because you have to ultimately work for them. And I've made that mistake where I've interviewed and I don't really like them, and I took the job anyway. And like day 2, I was like, I knew I didn't like them. It was too late. So yeah, so I won't make that mistake again. If I get that vibe, I probably wouldn't take the job.
Yeah, but if that situation repeats itself, how long do you feel you need to stay? Or would you be true to yourself and say, I'm sorry, this is not a good fit?
Yeah, it depends on your situation. You know, at the time when I was in that role, it was a recession, and so like I probably need to stick it out, you know, because I wasn't sure if I was going to find another job. And I just wanted to work, you know. But I think now, if I got into a situation that I didn't really like, I would have no problem, like a week later, saying, I can't do that now, by the way. As a public company CFO, I can't do that. But if I was not, I would be okay saying this is not working out. But if you're a public company CFO, you can't even like, it's not like I can quit tomorrow and go, hey, Nicole, I'm going to be gone in 2 weeks. Like, it's more like a 6-month or a year-long, you know, unwind. But I would have, if I would have known now what I know then, I probably would have said, hey, this might not be a good fit had there not been a recession. So, yeah, but in that case, I waited 14 months.
So, based on your experience, what would be your recommendations for Latina founders that are fundraising, growing their teams, developing products, trying to have a personal life, and everything?
Yeah. So for founders specifically, you know, it's no different than I would tell any founder, which is, you know, make sure you understand where your product sits in the market. Like that's really important, and that you're filling a gap or solving a problem for a customer. That's, you know, depending on the company, and be very crystal clear about that before you go too far. Because what I've seen, and now that, and I don't see that many founders, but I do see some in the circles that I'm in. And most often, if they're getting funding, it's because they have found that market fit and that product fit, and they have amazing talent at that level, especially engineering talent. So I think that's really important. And don't compromise on the talent early, even though it's expensive. You know, you've got to get the right talent because you make 1 or 2, especially at that level, if you make 1 or 2 hires that are not good, that could set you back 6 to 12 months, which you don't have, right? So I would say just prioritize waiting to get the right person and the right talent and not compromise that. Super important. I would tell you that in any role, but particularly in that situation.
Can you talk about how you add value to the company as a CFO and you don't just end up like reporting results? How do you help drive growth?
Sure. I ask a ton of questions. No, you know, if you look at a pie chart about how I spend my time, board stuff aside, you know, the day-to-day, I probably spend very little time actually You know, I have a team that, you know, they close the books and they do the forecast and all that. So my time is mostly spent with my peers figuring out where's the growth opportunity presented us, who is our customer, where's our market opportunity, what regions are performing well, why are they not performing well. And I'm not afraid to tell people, you know, even if it's not, like I work with the head of sales a lot, and we talk a lot about, you know, how do we build a partner ecosystem, and, you know, why are we doing so well in Brazil and not in here, or whatever. You know, we have a dialogue about the company holistically. And so to me, I'm adding value because I'm pushing the team a lot, but I'm also looking for where do I put that next dollar? You know, I've got an investment portfolio, where am I going to put it? And that choice is an important one. And so by me understanding the business, I can sort of I can calibrate that investment to what I think is going to be the best return. I wouldn't be able to do that if all I did was report the numbers. I think that's nice, but it's not really the signal of business, right? And so I have to understand, where is the business today? Where will the business be in 2 or 3 years? And where is that growth going to come from? So I do a lot of that. I run our long-range planning process, and we've coined it, let's really prioritize instead of long-range plan. Because a lot of what I do is make sure we are ruthless in our prioritization, because we do have a finite amount of resources, whether it's talent or money, buildings, whatever it is, we've got to really prioritize what we're doing. So I think that's one way I add value. And when I got here, just to give you perspective, we were looking, you know, I asked, so does anyone have a long-range plan? And when someone, you know, we talked about the company being a billion-dollar company. So I went looking for this billion-dollar plan, and I couldn't find it. It was, you know, on someone's laptop in Boston, actually. It was an employee of mine that I found out I had a finger, which is funny. And I said, hey, so where did this plan come from? It's like, oh, look, you know, take a spreadsheet, and you grow 30% a year, you're going to be a billion-dollar company. I'm like, I get that, but but how are we going to get there, you know? And so I put a lot of structure around that, and that's another way, as a CFO or a finance person, you can add tremendous value. And when I first introduced that to my boss, I told him, I said, look, you know, we're looking right now 30 days out, maybe a quarter out. We got to put the headlights out a lot farther. And the whole company was focused on, we got to land a quarter, And I was like, that's cute, but we also got to grow over the next 3 years. And so we built the LRP from that. And every year it gets better, and every year everyone complains about it, but I don't care. This is what it is.
Like, I had a totally different question before, but hearing you just say that, and coming from prior startup experience where I've been there, like, if you're already doing that, like, kind of like you said that Jess was, you're only a little bit short-sighted, a little bit like, how do we catch up, or how do we, you know, make up for what we just promised that we didn't deliver? How do you kind of like right that ship when you feel like you're always kind of playing catch-up to being like, no, we're going to really do that long-term plan? Like, how do you get there or turn that around?
Yeah, so I think, you know, when I got to Zendesk a few years ago, we were in a similar situation. Like, things were good, but not great, I would say. And we were going through some a couple of troubled quarters, and kind of growing pains of a startup.
So the culture, right?
What's that?
It's the culture.
Yeah, it was more of a, you know, where are we going to serve enterprise customers, or were we going to serve SMB? There was it was a time we were trying to figure out who we were going to be. And so there was a couple where I think we had missed our numbers a couple times or something like that. I don't remember, but it was definitely a time where we needed to course correct. And the first thing was getting everyone back to what are our core priorities and what is our strategy. And if we can align on that, it's a lot easier to course correct, because you take out the things that are really connected to that. So we went through some really tough conversations, or really good conversations about what we should stop doing, and instead of peanut butter spreading our investment, where we would point the investment, and what our priorities were, and also giving visibility to what we were doing. That was a big thing, is there wasn't really complete visibility to everything. And so when I say finance get to see the whole thing, it was very, very easy for me very quickly to go, okay, this is what we're doing. Does everyone understand that? And most of my peers did not. And so that was step one, is sort of let's level set on where we are, and then let's get everyone back focused on priorities. But also being patient, because all of us feel, especially in tech, you're always like that hamster, right, on that wheel. It's just the nature of the beast. And so that's why that ruthless prioritization is so important.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hey there. So I think that your immigrant background, family's immigrant background is really inspiring, because a lot of times you don't see CFOs with this unique background. But also I think that obviously you led with your hard work, but then there's also a cool community behind you that's supporting you in your growth.
Yeah.
So is there any organizations, books, or podcasts that were really helpful in your career?
Podcasts weren't around when I was so, books, there's a book that's called The First 90 Days that I would encourage you to read, especially if you switch jobs, because I think, you want to have an impact, when you come. So when I came to Zendesk, I definitely read that book just to sort of understand how will I spend my first 90 days. And it didn't tell me what to do. It just gave me kind of a structure or a framework on how to think about it. But most of it came from talking to people. It wasn't really books. It was more people who had gone down the path before I had. And in my family, I didn't have a lot of that, but I definitely had learned early on that I should network with people and make friends and so on. And so I've often reached out to old colleagues, my first boss, now from 20 years ago. Actually, what's interesting is when I was getting recruited to this job, because it was a public company CFO, they couldn't go to Salesforce and ask them, hey, what's she like, right? Because they couldn't show their hand. So they had to go back in my history, like they couldn't, like there was 6 or 7 years at Salesforce. So the recruiter said we were trying to figure out who we could call. So I ended up calling my boss from when I was 28 years old, and which was funny. It was the first time I was a VP at the time, a baby VP, I think, at the time. And I remember interviewing with her, and I remember thinking, she's not going to give me the job. There's no way she's not going to give me the job. And so I go up to interview with her, and I was completely starstruck because she was a chief marketing officer at Schwab, and her office was next door to Charles Schwab, and I had never seen him before. And I'm like a kid working at this big company, and I go up into the elevator, and he comes into the elevator, and I'm like, oh my God, what do I say? It was just a moment I'll never forget. And he had his little security people or whatever, and I was with my little resume, with like my ugly suit. And anyway, it was a moment. But I got on the executive floor, and so I was so freaked out about that. I go up, I interview, I come back downstairs, and my boss at the time said, hey, come down, I have some feedback for you. He goes, how'd the interview go? I said, oh, it was good, I was really nervous, and I saw Chuck. I was all excited about seeing Chuck Schwab. And he goes, you got the job. I said, I did? He goes, yeah, I'm good. Well, what did she say? She goes, well, she says you're young, but she thinks, yeah, you can do the job. I'm like, yeah, screw that. I'm gonna like crush this job, because that gave me the chip on my shoulder. And so she ended up being sort of my boss for the next few years, and that's who they called for this job when they were doing a reference check. And the funny thing was that she wrote this long essay to this recruiter. She said, you should see this letter. I'm like, wow, that's like 22 years ago or 25 years ago when I was here. And this title was, "A Tiger Doesn't Change Their Stripes." So my point in sharing that is, in your early part of your career, there will be someone who they're going to call at some point for some job you're going to have way down the road, because you really don't change who you are, your work ethic, what you're doing. And so lean on those people that you have in your career now, because you never know in the future when they're going to call them to say, tell me a little bit about Elena, what was she like, and so on. So just remember that as you go through your career. It's really important.
Had another one. I'm curious with these kinds of transitions and these big roles, how have salary negotiations gone for you, and how have you used this like quiet confidence that you have in those spaces?
Yeah, so I have never really been good at it, I'll be honest, until I took this job where I realized I probably need to do something about this time, because everyone would always negotiate with me, especially the men, no offense to the men in the room. But they would always negotiate. I never did. I just took whatever, just culturally, I was like, whatever my boss says, I'm going to take. But I think it comes back to articulating, with the breadth and experience of the job I have, and that's sort of how I did it here. It's like, this is my experience. It's a big, the breadth of the role is big, and the experience. So you sort of lead with your experience and make sure that they are clear about that experience and what you're bringing to the table. And don't assume they know. That's the one thing. Like, even people I interview sometimes, I see their resume 2 seconds before I interview them. And then we give them an offer, and then next thing you know, they're on my floor, and they assume I know everything about them. And I'm like, I don't even remember exactly. So don't assume whoever you're negotiating with knows your background, so make sure you articulate that to them. And then, talk about the career path in the role, and then get down to, given my experience, my breadth of experience, and what I'm going to bring to the table, here's where I think this is my expectation. Now, I think what's more important is the timing of that conversation, right? You don't want to do it too early, because then you feel like when the guy asks you out too quick. But then you don't want to do it too late where you've missed the opportunity to influence the outcome. So I think that's the more important part. But I would never be afraid now to say, this is my expectation. All they can say is, well, we're way off. But that's the starting point for your negotiation. Does that make sense? And I get that every single time from anyone who's joining at the highest levels. It just is the way it is now. So you won't be the only one, is my point.
Hi, Elena. I'm going to wrap it up with one last question that I have for you personally. So,
sure.
Diversity in tech is something that's becoming more and more important to employees and employers alike. But it's something that's very challenging to succeed in. So I was curious to hear from you having worked at Salesforce, who was trailblazing a lot of this diversity in tech, and also at Zendesk. Would love to hear from you what you think. Where do you think we're missing the mark? Like, we as in the industry. And where have you seen succeed the most?
Sure. I think to me, and having now been on the board of the high school business, I see this. It's become very apparent to me that it starts with the students who are graduating, and making sure that even at that early age, whether it's from high school into college, that you're really encouraging and enabling that and educating that next generation that it's possible. And then even in the schools, we're trying, at least at Haas, we're trying to make sure we have professors that are reflective of who we are, right? Whether it's Latinas or African American, just making sure that that is really, really a priority for the school. And then in tech, and it's still a challenge, I'm not going to lie. What we have found that works is visibility into where we are. It's like weighing yourself and looking at the data and understanding where you are, and then giving yourself a commitment and a goal, really by C-level. So I have it for my own finance team, I have it for my success team, I see the numbers. And then it's people like me saying, I'm not going to hire anyone until I see a female on the slate, and being very religious about it. That works. but I'm one person. And so all of you have the opportunity to do that when you're in your specific role, and then eventually it will catch on. But it won't happen in a broad movement. It will happen, I think, in small micro movements. You know what I mean? So it's not like there's one silver bullet to fix it, really. But it starts with having a D&I program for sure, and someone focused on it, and then the execution and follow through of it too.
Thank you so much. I wanted to thank you ladies for being with us here tonight. Incredible moderating skills and incredible story by Elena, so thank you. And, on behalf of Zendesk, I wanted to point out that they are generously giving us complimentary tickets. So if any of you have any interest in attending the Zendesk annual conference, it's going to be in Miami. And if you use the LIT 100P code, you get to go for free. So super thank you to you guys, and yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Oh yes, and as part of our tradition, we're going to gather around the bleachers to take the selfie for tonight's event. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. You did a nice job. Were you nervous? A little nervous, yes.
Yes, you're a good personality.
Oh, no, no.
No, but it was very thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.